Good evening, I'm Cathy Lewis, and here's what matters. There's a new cancer treatment coming to Hampton. It's called Proton therapy. Jim and Susan Ralston had never heard of proton therapy until last summer when their 2-year-old son Jacob started the fight of his life. We'll meet Susan, Jim, and Jacob tonight, and we'll learn more about the proton therapy they had to travel to Texas to get. But Lisa Godley reports that soon proton therapy will be available right here in Hampton Roads at Hampton University.
Dr. William Harvey's dream of building a proton therapy treatment center in Hampton, Virginia is rapidly moving from idea to reality. Dr. Harvey first learned about proton therapy 3 years ago while talking with an alumnus about research Hampton University was doing in the field of cancer.
I had an alumnus to ask me if I knew anything about proton therapy. And I said to her that I did not, and she said that that was something that I might take a look at. So it piqued my interest from that conversation, and I went and immersed myself in research and found out that it was really almost like a silver bullet.
We asked the facility's scientific and technical director, Dr. Cynthia Keppel, to explain what makes proton therapy treatments so different from the chemo and radiation treatments we're used to.
Proton therapy is sort of as close as we have now to the perfect cancer treatment because you really only interact with the tumor and not the healthy tissue, which means you don't see it, you don't feel it, there's no side effects from interacting with your healthy tissue. In fact, you start to feel better. People who are getting eye cancer treatment start to see in the course of their treatment, not after they're treated.
This area is where a massive piece of equipment called a cyclotron will be housed. The cyclotron is responsible for creating and delivering proton beams to patients.
That accelerates the protons up to nearly the speed of light. They'll then come out of the cyclotron and straight all the way down this beam line to the very end.
The beam can then be piped into 5 different treatment rooms, which allow the Hampton University Proton Treatment Institute to treat over 2,000 patients every year.
For an example, the beam can be configured to the exact dimension of the tumor. The beam goes through healthy tissue without destroying the healthy tissue. It's given a signal to explode within the diseased tissue. And if it has not metastasized or spread, then it can be completely eradicated.
The 98,000 square foot facility will treat patients with prostate, breast, lung, and pediatric cancer. Treatments are approximately 60 seconds per day, and the number of weeks in treatment is usually determined by the size of the tumor. Because no healthy tissue is affected, patients can return to normal activities almost immediately. When it's completed, the Proton Therapy Center here in Hampton will be the largest in the world and will begin accepting patients in August of 2010. Dr. Harvey says with 1 in 3 Virginians getting cancer in his or her lifetime, there is definitely a need in this region for such a facility. But state and federal funding for the nearly $200 million treatment center has been slow coming. Nevertheless, the project is moving forward. The region's largest healthcare provider, Centera Healthcare, has committed $2 million to the project, and Dr. Harvey is hopeful legislators will come along.
And finally, on this point, I think that no one is immune from cancer. Everyone knows someone that has had cancer, whether or not it's a family member or a relative or a neighbor or a friend or a colleague or somebody. And if you look at what we're doing in totality, we really are easing human misery and saving lives.
For What Matters, I'm Lisa Godley.
You would just about have to have a medical degree to know more about proton therapy than Jim and Susan Ralston do today. They have been on a year-long odyssey through cancer and its impact on now 3-year-old Jacob, who joins us tonight along with his mom and dad. Nice to see you all. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
There's you. And you're looking good, my friend. And there's Mama. And where's Daddy? Maybe we'll get a shot of Daddy here in a minute. Well, it's nice to have you all with us.
There's Daddy and Jacob.
That's it. Well, we can see that Jacob's doing very well. And this, in fact, is a very big day for Jacob.
There's her.
Very positive
There's her, Daddy.
responses on his test results.
Right. Every 3 months now he goes through scans, CT and MRI scans. So we got the news this morning that no evidence of reoccurrence.
Oh,
so it was
that's an
the
amazing thing.
best news we've heard all day in a long time.
Yeah,
so we're really pleased with that.
And this whole process started about a year ago, right?
Yeah, in fact, just about a year ago now, he was at daycare and we got a call that he had an owie on his back. So anyway, at first, obviously, we didn't think that it was serious, although we did take him to the pediatrician, and ultimately we ended up at CHKD, and that's when we found out the grim news that Jacob had cancer. And so he had surgery to remove the tumor on his spine.
Let's stop at that
Yeah.
moment. You said that's when we found out he had cancer.
Right. Yeah, it was, you know, but you have to get engaged and you have to move forward, because there's literally hours from the news of finding out you have cancer to determining how you're going to be treated. So we had to get in high gear, and the family, you know, the friends,
Sure.
everybody had pitched in to get us the information we needed.
And you're the CEO of Bank Atlantic, so you are somebody who is very accustomed to sort of dealing in this world of getting information and getting it quickly. And I know you well enough to know that that's exactly what you did. You jumped into information gathering mode.
Absolutely. Yeah, we absolutely did, and our family helped a lot too,
Sure.
because we were at the hospital, and it was so wonderful to have a bunch of resources. But again, sifting through all the information, it's really overwhelming for a family.
And then I think, Jim, it was your father who knew about Proton. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, he worked.
You talk to me.
Okay, I'm going to talk. How about can I talk to you right now? Would that be all right? I'll come back to you in a minute, Jim. I know you just went on a big trip this summer.
Yeah.
Where did you go? You went to see Thomas the Train, right?
Right.
Yeah. How was that?
Good.
Yeah.
We were fast and slow. And Thomas the train stopped.
Right in front of you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You also went to a ballpark through the Make-A-Wish Foundation, right? Did you go to a ballpark and did you see the Steelers? I know you and your mom and dad are big Steelers fans, so that must have been very exciting. Was it really good?
Go Steelers!
There you go. Go Steelers. And Go Steelers has been a constant cry throughout this process, hasn't it? Okay, can I talk to your dad now?
Yeah.
Okay, and then in a minute, you're going to come back and sing for us, right?
Right.
Good enough. Jim, your dad was actually the one who knew about the proton therapy. right?
Correct. He has his own business or consulting business, and he's been working with the IBA, the company that I guess does the proton beam accelerators. And so, in talking, I've heard my father talk about protons, but I've never really kind of brushed it off, didn't know what it really was. But when I called him up after we got the phone call, I called him up to let him know that Jake had cancer, and he just immediately proton. And
you didn't know anything about it, and he really had to kind of press you to take a look at this.
Yeah, he pushed us to. I mean, he was adamant about doing proton in place of chemo, but and come to find out it was they had to work hand in hand together. And
Jake, do you want to come sit in this chair? Is that what you want to do?
let me see if
Okay. We brought an extra chair to our set tonight because Jake likes to move around, right? Are you doing all right now?
I'll see my mama.
Okay, good enough. He wants to see his mama, and why not? And why not? Indeed. All right, Jake, there you go.
All right.
We knew this was going to be a little bit of a free-form thing tonight because Jake has a mind and an energy all of his own, and it's a great, exciting day for him and for his parents as well. So your father said, "Look, you've got to look at this proton therapy. You just got to do this."
He pushed it hard and heavy on us, and at first we weren't even sure what he was talking about, so we just we were getting so much information from different people that we had to selectively choose what we thought would be helpful, retain what we thought might be helpful, and just kind of pass off. But after listening to them, and then when we actually sat down with the two doctors, Dr. Warner and Dr. Lowe, to kind of tell us what we're going to expect the next year or so, we asked them about Proton, and they said that they have sent people down to MD Anderson or up to
Houston,
and then or up to Boston to their Proton Center. So it was something that they were familiar with, but we kind of felt like that we were the ones that had to bring it up to.
You really pressed it.
Yes.
And you kept pressing it.
And we just persisted that, if anything, we at least wanted him to be seen by MD Anderson down in Houston, because we didn't want to take baby steps with his treatment. We want to make sure he got seen by the best. If they told us down there the same thing that they're telling us at CHKD, but then we found out that Jake was a perfect candidate, and on what scale of 1 to 10, he was a 10.
Wow.
And so they got us in there, and we fought hard to get down there. We fought.
And we're seeing some pictures of his treatment now, and some various visits that he's been on over the course of this odyssey of really about a year, which thankfully is having a very happy outcome. Susan, you brought in tonight something that is a key important part of proton therapy. Tell us about this.
Right. With proton therapy, they're able to target the tumor very accurately. And I brought this because I think it shows, you can see the 3D nature of this mold. And this mold is what controls the depth on the proton machine. And in Jake's case, with having the tumor on his spine, there was a lot of organs, very important organs like your heart and so forth, that we wanted to make sure the radiation did not touch.
So was the tumor that big?
Yes, and this shows you
on that little guy.
There's a little bit of a room, of course, for margin, they call it, but pretty much.
But for the most part, that's how
that
big
was a pretty large tumor
Wow.
for a 2-year-old to have on his back.
No wonder
so
he
it was
had
very.
an owie.
I had to sit down when I saw this mold because I never realized how deep it was.
Sure.
But so this proton was able to go in 25 treatments, zap that tumor bed. Because typically when a tumor reoccurrence happens, it happens from the original location. So we really want to make sure that was zapped good. And
the point of the proton, and the thing that makes it so exciting, is, as you say, it doesn't affect as much the important organs around wherever the tumor site is.
Exactly, and there's no exit dose either. With typical radiation, there's an entrance and an exit, whereas with proton, there's simply an entrance, and this controls the exit, which means there is no exit. So that's the best thing about it. I mean, we're very lucky to get this in Hampton Roads.
As you're looking through sort of the intellectual work around proton therapy, looking at what it does and what it can't do and all the rest of it, my gosh, you know, you're still a mom, you're still a dad. This little boy, who's adorable, is just 2 years old. What was that piece of it like for you?
Well, it's obviously mixed emotions because you're glad to have the latest treatment, but yet there's little written about it, for example. You know, to really look at success stories or other case, you know, stories with the 2-year-old having a spinal tumor, having proton therapy. But overall, we've been very, I mean, lucky, I think, to have this technology available to us in the U.S. And that's probably the scariest part about proton is only 5% of the people that need to get the proton are really getting it today, mostly because of facilities. There just aren't enough facilities in the U.S. So having this one here, and there's several other in the works throughout the country, are going to get it to people that need it. And
again, this facility, this coming to Hampton University, is anticipated to be completed, I think, in 2010.
Correct.
So that'll be great news. Cost. Everybody wants to know about the cost. I mean, it's got to be huge.
Right. I would estimate it's about 5 times the cost of traditional radiation treatment. However, certainly somebody at Jake's age, if you look at the fact of no reoccurrence and not having to have the treatment ever again, you know, you have to start looking at the long-term, you know, outcome and so forth. And that is part of the problem. It's an expensive facility to build. It's expensive. The people that work there, obviously highly trained and skilled to maneuver those machines, and the number of people that can afford, you know, for example, the health insurance that would actually cover that.
Right.
So it is a business.
This has really turned you into an advocate. I think both of you have been in this role, but Susan, I note that you've really been all over this from the perspective of the knowledge that that funding is an issue, and also that the treatment is not a lot different for children than for adults.
Right, that's true. Most of the protocols for cancer treatment, in fact, Jake's protocol for Ewing sarcoma was the exact same as if he was an adult. So proton therapy is really ideal for children because of the fact it can be targeted. It has limited side effects, and as I said before, with the organs that are not interrupted. And these are growing children. Yeah. They're still in their development years. So what could that radiation do to a developing heart or lungs? Or, you know, it's scary.
So in the midst of all of this, you all had to continue to travel back and forth between here and Houston. Jim, I think you had to wind up just not working anymore, just to kind of be attentive to everything that was happening. One of the things that Jim did in the course of this very dramatic year in their family's life is to follow Jake around with a camera and sort of bring us a day in the life of Jake in what has been an extraordinary year.
As he always leads us the way. Who's there? Who's over there?
You ready? No. Hey, y'all. Well, you get to watch us clean up. Hey, man.
There's Dr. Porsche. There's Dr. Cynthia. for them to come off.
Oh, gosh.
Even though I keep telling them that they can put more on.
Yeah.
But he likes it. Ready to go? You ready to go? Can't Jacob push it?
No, I push it.
Okay, Daddy will push.
Yeah.
There we go.
And as you saw earlier, Jake's hair is back, and he still has a lot of energy. You know, the thing that you observed about this little boy, if you've been with him for any length of time, is his outlook, his energy doesn't seem to change. And these were painful treatments. I mean, painful in terms of the associated medical work that had to be done around the treatment themselves. Obviously, he was asleep for that bit of it. But I mean, just getting ready for it and all the prep.
Yeah, chemotherapy. They say that it brings you close to death, and then they bring other drugs to bring you back to life, and that's what we saw 14 times with the chemotherapy.
So that happened
simultaneously with the Proton. So, yeah, we had 14 rounds. So about 3 rounds, we had Proton going on simultaneously, or I mean chemo. I'm sorry, simultaneously. So, but the Proton, luckily, because if you're going through traditional radiation, that in itself can be very, you know, just very tired, a lot of symptoms afterwards. So I think we were lucky in that regard to have the Proton.
So, Jim, what happens now? He's had this, he's finished his treatment, and no tumor, at least that we're able to see, and got today the big news that we got a first clear scan, right?
First clear scan after 3 months after he finished his treatment, which is a good sign because for Ewing sarcoma, typically they say that it's within the first 5 months is usually when it could reoccur, or typically does, and it's not the norm. But so the next 2 more months, you know, or I guess the next third scan, or you know, or 3 months for the next scan, will show us, you know, hopefully we'll get the same results. But we're hoping that we get to see a little normal boy now grow up, and we just we meet with his doctor next week, and we've got to find out about his immunizations from when he was little, you know, if he still has those, if he has to get more, which we're kind of hoping that we don't have to do that because his body still, with all the chemo, pretty much wipes everything out. So
all these things you don't think about.
You don't think
if
about
you're not
so
in this context.
He may or may not be ready for, you know, daycare when, you know, this fall. So we're still in the planning stage of what we're going to do, what he's going to do, how we're going to deal with it, and you know, if I go back to work, do I go back full time, part time?
And I hope you'll forgive this, but you know, you are a family that has the option to say, Jim will take off work for a bit of time and decide maybe he'll go back part time, maybe he'll go back full time. You have the option to make that decision. It's got to put you in touch with the families that don't have that option. It's
made me see that, you know, even when Jake first got, you know, diagnosed, and right after he had surgery, when he was in the intensive care unit, we'd see other little kids up there without parents. And I'm like, how can the parents not be here? But then it comes into, you know, working families, and I mean, it's just all these other circumstances.
You can see how they can't,
Yeah, and it just, at first you don't see it that way. You just think, you know, how can a parent not be, you know, be here at their child's side? And there's circumstances that, you know, we're just not, you know, we didn't have to think about that. You know, it's just automatic.
It's like so many things that if you dig down a little bit, you can see sort of there's always a story behind things, isn't there? Yeah. And Susan Ralston, you know, I think about, you were talking about earlier about the support and the things that you never would have imagined that you had to think about in the course of this thing.
Right.
And one of the things that I think has been particularly for you a real lifesaver has been this Caring Bridge website.
Right.
And tell us a little bit about that.
Caring Bridge, it's www.caringbridge.org. It's an organization that it really makes the internet available to families for medical emergencies, not just cancer, but accidents. And it's really overwhelming at first because all the family wanted to know every step of the way, what happened, what did the doctor say? And of course we want to get the information out. But in spending time doing that, you know, it was taking time away from research and whatnot.
Sure.
So we quickly, the hospital recommended the site to us, and we set up the site, and we still today put messages on there. And when tests come up for Jake, just like this test that we had, you know, the words of support that we get are very meaningful. Sure. And very much appreciated.
And you have people from all over the country logging in and watching Jake's progress. And,
yes.
And it's also helped put you in touch with that community of advocacy, because one of the things, if Jake's situation here has been anything, it has been a call to advocacy for you.
It has. I remember talking to the doctors about, I wish more people knew about this. If I was 20-something, I'd go back and get my degree so I could help people with this treatment. And the doctor said the most important thing you can do is advocacy, because it's getting the word out, getting people to ask, is Proton right for my situation? Right. And it's not always right.
Just to know that that's
an option,
something that may be in the arsenal, that you ought to at least ask the question.
Right. And some tumors it's not right for. You know, no doubt. They haven't developed it enough for certain types of cancers. But like Jake's case on prostate, obviously, it's a very, you know, advanced for that type of cancer.
So to start putting the information on the table, start asking about it, and then start looking at this issue of funding, which is extraordinary. Right. I mean, you know, when you think about the reality of the statistics on this, it really is quite extraordinary.
Yes.
Well, we are going to wish for all of you just nothing but the very best, and loads of continued positive, clear scans, and we'll look for caringbridge.org, and I guess anybody could look at Jacob's page, couldn't they?
It's under Jacob Ralston. If you go to the home page and visit Jacob Ralston, all one word, and you can read about his progress and the ups and downs of cancer treatment. And right now we're on and up, so we're going to enjoy that. And that's what you do learn about cancer, is you enjoy the happy times that you have. Yeah. More sweet than ever.
Indeed so. Well, I'm sorry we didn't get to hear Jake sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game. I was looking forward to that, and I know you were too, but he's otherwise engaged elsewhere in the studio. So maybe we'll get him next time. What do you know? Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight, and best of continued success to all of you, and most especially to little Jacob. I'll be back in just a moment with a final thought. And now an update on young Jacob Ralston, who is now 3 years old and sporting a beautiful head of curly blonde hair. Jacob enjoyed his first Halloween this year, being able to trick or treat. He's always been in treatment or too sick before now. He was a knight in shining armor. His mom, Susan, continues her passionate advocacy for funding for children's cancer research. She attended a major conference on proton therapy in children in September and has just returned from the Florida Proton Center, where she was invited to meet with pediatric radiation oncologists and caregivers about her work spearheading a pediatric proton foundation. Sadly, several of the families the Ralstons have met along this journey have lost their children. These passings are always upsetting to Susan and Jim, but Jacob's zest for life inspires them. Jacob's next scans are scheduled for December 3rd. His parents, Susan and Jim, have grown wearily accustomed to the testing roller coaster. Anxiety before the tests, relief when the clear scan report is released, and hope and prayer that the next ones will be as well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week for another look at what matters.